So I'm kind of continuing on from the past couple of live videos that I did, and also continuing in terms of what I've been writing about in my blog and what I've been reading about in terms of creation's journey and heaven's journey. And I'm going back through them, and I'm like in the 80s or something for both of those. And they're talking about creating a character and how we create a character, and we create multiple characters within ourselves, and that gives the world itself a certain character. So there's like a character of this world, and it's like that word character has a lot of different meanings in terms of how we use it, but the easiest way to think about it in the context of what I'm talking about is just like a character in a video game. You know, like yesterday I was talking about what is real, or are you real? And it's like, clearly a character in a video game is not real, right? Like if you go and you play a video game like Sims or any of those kind of games, or like Warcraft or World of Warcraft or whatever, and you have a character, you know that that's not real. It's not the real you, right? It's just a character. It has attributes, it has definitions, it has certain skills, abilities, and so forth, but you know it's not really you. It's just a computer program. But when you're playing the game, you get really wrapped up in it. You get really absorbed into it. And it's like you become that thing temporarily. And some people really get really absorbed. They identify more with that than their real life. But even within our, quote, real lives, we're still living out characters. And look at, for example, when you interact with people that you know, like your friends, for example. You'll have one friend where you'll act a certain way, and you'll always kind of tell the same kinds of jokes. You might be more outgoing around that person, or you might be more reserved, or like you act a certain way around your parents, or if you have kids, you know, you act a certain way towards them. And I mean, this whole point goes so deep, but just looking at it from the surface level of if you have a defined character, one, it's like you're not real, because you're just acting in a preordained, pre-programmed way, a predictable way, in fact. And it's like, imagine, for example, if you play one of those video games, and I don't know a lot about like World of Warcraft, but I know it's a really popular one. But they have like, as far as I know, they have like different classes of characters. So it's like you can be like a wizard or something like that, or you can be like a warrior, you know, generally speaking. And each of those different classes will have different attributes. And so it's like you can develop those strengths, but they'll have certain weaknesses. And you could try to compensate, I would assume, but generally speaking, you're kind of stuck in a sort of path of like what you can do. And it's the same way in real life when we have a character that we play with certain people. Is like we're stuck in a certain kind of mode. It's like, as a parent, for example, you know, it's really easy to have this character of, you know, and we get it from our parents, we get it from teachers and other people, but it's a character that I've had to look at and challenge for myself, which is like the character of like always trying to want to like restrict things that your child is doing. Like, for example, when I was playing with Max earlier today, he wanted to go play in my car. He likes to go and sit in, and I have an Explorer. He likes to sit in the car, and he likes to push like the different buttons and like turn on the hazard lights, and you know, like play with the stuff in my cup holder. Like I might have some change in there, and he wants to play with the change. Or so today he was going through like my center console, and I had a bunch of, I don't know why, but like I had a bunch of push pins. I must have like, I think I was gonna go put some flyers up, and I left the box or something in the center console. So these push pins, and he was taking them out, and he just wanted to hold them in his hand. And I said to him, I said, hey, be careful with those. They can poke you. You just be aware that they're sharp, you know. And he's like, he said, I just want to hold them. And I said, okay, that's cool. You can hold them. And then he's kind of playing with them. And then there's like in the center console, there's like this where like the little tab hooks into the main part of the center console that kind of like locks the cover in, there's like a hole there where like this little latch, you know, clicks into. And he was like, took like a quarter and was like about to drop it in there, and I said, hey Max, don't drop that quarter in there, it's gonna get stuck and I won't be able to get it out. But then he just did it anyways, and then he picked up another one and did it again, and I just kind of like laughed, like, and then I said to him, hey, I'm gonna shut this now, right, because we can't put a whole bunch of stuff in there, it's gonna get stuck in there and I won't be able to shut this. So I explained to him what I was doing, but I could still see within myself that character coming out of like, stop that, don't do that, like, you know. And it's like, I'm not being hard on myself, because I know that I'm not yelling at him, I'm not hitting him, I'm not punishing him, I'm not taking stuff out of his hands. Like, I'm doing it in a very gentle, respectful way. Like, if I was doing something where I didn't really fully understand the consequences of what I was doing, how I would want someone to explain it to me. So that's the approach I'm taking when I'm talking to Max. That being said, though, I can still feel myself going into that character of like, I need to just restrict, instead of like being there in the moment, just playing with him, which could potentially prevent something like that from occurring, because I could be in the moment directing myself and directing Max within that, in the context of like playing and having fun. And I've done that before. Like, that's why he likes to sit in the car, because I've done that, where, you know, he wanted to play one time, and I took him out to the car and I showed him the hazard lights and how they turn on and click. And then I took him outside of the truck and I showed him how the lights in the front and the back blink. And then we got in Mom's car and did the same thing and showed him how when you turn those ones on, it's a different button. It's like a switch or something, or it's at a different place. And then those lights blink on the car, but like it's a different color in the back lights as my car is. And he was like really interested in that, wanted me to explain to him how it works, and you know, what hazard lights are for, and I use those opportunities to just really explain to him stuff that's in his environment, and he finds it interesting. And it's like, when you explain stuff to kids, they love it. At least that's what I've experienced with Max. He loves when I explain stuff to him, and he wants to know more. And then what's easy to go into as a parent is like, okay, these are the set things my child likes doing, so I'm going to keep putting him in those situations, because he's going to ask to do that because he doesn't know anything else. So I'm just going to put him back in there, and okay, you know, 10 minutes is up, okay, let's go do something else now, you know. But it's like, that's a character that you go into as a parent. You're not alive. Alive would be like just in the moment, enjoying yourself, being with the other child, being with your child, being together, experiencing reality, investigating it, being alive, like being here and exploring. But when you go into that character personality, it's like it shuts that down, and you're just like a machine biding its time. And you know, like when you really are focused and enjoying yourself and discovering something new, you don't even notice the time pass. But so it's like time doesn't really exist. It literally does not exist. It only exists in the context of the system, which is based on money, which is based on a calendar, which is based on the seasons of production of food and night and day. And it's like all based on the money system. But time itself doesn't actually exist per se. But it's so easy to go into that point of like, when you're with your children, just like, okay, I got to go from point A to point B. I got to go from point A in time to point B in time. And, you know, there's this much time, and I have to do something else. And so let's just get this over with, and let's, okay, play, but I'm just watching the clock. And it's like, that's not being alive. That's not enjoying life and expressing yourself and letting your child express themselves. That's just, again, it's a character that we take on as a parent. And that's just one really small, simple example that we do. So then you can look at all the ways in which you play into a certain type of character, and there's lots of them. So it's like when you're parenting with that child, that's a certain character. When you're with a different child, it's a different character. When you're with your spouse, it's a different character. When you're with your friend, this friend versus that friend, it's a different character. And you'll know it's a different character because there's different characteristics. There's different personality traits that come out or that you suppress around different people. Like when you go to work, are you one character versus when you're at home. And for myself, because I've really been investigating these points as of late, one of the things that I've really started to notice as my self-awareness develops is this point of like lately especially, there's been this point coming up where it's like I'll have this overwhelming sense of just like tiredness, and like it's not depression. Like I've experienced depression in my life, like the clinical like sort of, you know, experience of depression, but it's like a depressed feeling. It's like not a positive feeling. It's more of it's a negative, like a tiredness. And then I notice a character step forth of dwelling on that, and that starts to amplify it. And so it's cool because as I identify these things, and as you identify these things with yourself, you realize like, hey, I've identified a pattern that I go into, which is actually a participation in energy. And so it doesn't matter what the character is. You could have 1,000 characters, you could have 2 characters, you could have 1 character. They all are like these constructs of information that is it's like, it's brilliantly described in Creation's Journey. It's like you can chart out, here's the characteristic. This is what that character says. This is what this character does. This is how they feel about certain things. This is how they feel about other things. This is what they like, what they dislike. And you access that information. It's like you lock into that character. It's like when I was growing up, my uncles played this game called Dungeons and Dragons, which I never played, but I know kind of how it works. And it's like you have a character sheet. And on this sheet, this character sheet, it tells you like what your attributes are. And I don't know how much flexibility you have in creating your own character or whatever, but it tells you like how much damage you can do on another character, or, you know, like what's your abilities, and like, you know, everything about the character is defined on this sheet. And when you play the game, you play as that character. And you use your imagination to imagine the scenarios, you know, that are not really occurring, but you're playing as that character. And it's like, how much does that just describe our lives, our existence here on Earth? That you like are like, when you go in the presence of someone else, you automatically are reading from a character sheet, and you're doing it unconsciously most of the time, subconsciously most of the time, and somewhat consciously. You know, it's not often that you realize, okay, what am I doing? What am I accessing here? But, you know, in moments you'll be aware of it. But then it's like, it's so subtle, because even when you think you're not participating in a character, even when you're alone with yourself, you're playing a character. Even like when you're talking to someone else, or you're listening to a video like this and you have reactions going on within yourself, or you're thinking about something, like those are all characters. They're characteristics. They're predictable. And they prevent us from really being here and fully living. Because like, I mean, think about what's the difference between a machine and like something that's alive. You know, the machine is mechanical. It's super predictable. That's why we like machines. That's why we like computers, because they're so predictable. But, you know, the reason why I wanted to make this video, the point I was looking at was how predictable we must all be as human beings, living out all these characters. And so if you were a politician, how easy would it be for you to manipulate people based on their character, based on their characters? Because it's like each character will have a certain sort of energetic or feeling response to certain words or certain things or certain presentations. And when you playing that role as a character, it's like you have a preset defined, like, this is how I respond to this. And I can't break character. It's like in a movie, you have characters. And, you know, it's like, you ever watch Seinfeld? You don't expect George Costanza to do the same things as Kramer, right? You wouldn't expect George Costanza to like bust open the door and be like, hey, like that's Kramer. And in fact, if they could even do something like that to really make a funny joke, because you're not expecting that to happen. And like, imagine being a politician and knowing what the character of a country is and what people's characters are like, and knowing what words to say and what not to like trigger people. And so it's so funny because people talk a lot about honesty in this world, and they may not like some of the things I say because they don't agree with it. It doesn't agree with their opinion, but it's like, you're just an opinion. You're not real anyways. And so you would rather someone tell you a lie, as long as it sounds like something you like to hear, than someone tell you the truth when it's something you don't like to hear. It's like it doesn't fit into your character's sort of way of doing things. So it's like, because of the way someone will express something, you won't listen to it. But then you'll go and you'll listen to somebody else say something else that's not to your benefit, but because they present themselves in the way you like. This is why it's so easy for people to be manipulated in like sales and spirituality and self-improvement and all these things, because basically if you're really fucking good at being dishonest and presenting the picture that other people want to see, they'll give you money because you make them feel good. And they won't even know why they're doing it. They'll like beg you. So it's like, when you're playing that game of the character, none of that's real. And then we look up to people like Tony Robbins or these people like they're so amazing, but it's like, no, that's just a character. He's just playing a role, and you're responding to that role just like a fan listening, responding to a rock star. There's a really good interview called Advantages of a Pre-Programmed Design by Bernard Pullman. You can look it up on YouTube. Just type Advantages of Pre-Programmed Design, Bernard Pullman, you'll find it, where he explains all of this. And then another really good one that I listened to recently called Changing the Character of the World, where he goes more into the point of characters and all that, as well as some of the stuff I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, I'm just talking to explain some points that I realize and that I can share as points of support. But in reality, if you're not walking this process, if you're not studying those 2 blogs, Creation's Journey to Life, Heaven's Journey to Life, if you're not doing DIP, if you're Destiny I process, if you're not writing your own self-forgiveness, writing your own self-correction, and being self-aware, you know what I mean? Like, if you're just watching videos like this, it can be helpful to a point, but it's not ultimately going to make a difference if you're not like engaging and saying, I need to actually look at the characters that I play and that I've accepted since the beginning of my conception, really, which is going to be hard to identify those ones, obviously. But it's like, you develop characters by watching your parents and seeing how they interact with each other and with you, and then based on that, you'll take certain parts of things you like about what they do, and then you'll reject certain parts and do the opposite of certain things you don't like. So you're just a copy of your parents' characters. Your parents' a character. Like, when you go to your parents' house for like Thanksgiving or whatever, you know what they're going to say. You know what they're going to do. It's predictable. That is not living. Being alive is not predictability. But this whole world runs on predictability. There's certain things that should be predictable. Whether you have food, okay? Whether you can have clean water, whether you have sanitation and you can, relieve yourself. Whether you have, some kind of form of waste disposal. Whether you're going to have shelter, clothing, access to communication devices. Things like that should be predictable. But because you need them. But what's ironic is that's the only thing in this fucking world that's not predictable. Is that a person can predict that they're going to have those all the time no matter what. So you create all these fucking characters which create a predictable life for yourself in terms of how you'll respond in different situations, just so you can go and play the survival game, so you can try to get those things with some amount of predictability that you need to continue existing. Instead of us just creating a predictable system that ensures that for everybody, but people won't agree to it as long as we're accepting this character of, for example, no, you got to work hard for everything you get, and I don't want to be I don't want to support a welfare state, and I don't want to, it's like all of those things as characters that are influencing all these other points I'm talking about also influence the fact that we won't stand up, all of us, and create a system that's best for all. Because the most fundamental character that we're all accepting and participating in is the character of, all I care about is me, my existence, my survival. I don't care about anything else. I don't have time for anything else. I just care about me, and I want to feel good. I want to feel good now, and I need to go to work, and whatever I need to do to just make my survival work so I can try to focus on feeling good. That's the basic character of everybody. And so if that doesn't change, the world will never change, and we'll always just be stuck in these characters, never actually living, just playing a game for our whole existence and then dying and not existing anymore. When the game turns off, does the character continue existing? No. That's going to be that's the fact of our existence. We're not going to exist after our life ends. Check out the blog I did called Game Over on my blog, theindividualandthecollective.blogspot.com. It's on my Facebook as well. So that's what I wanted to share. Just this point, I'm starting to look at for myself more and more and more of really investigating what are all these characters and becoming aware in moments of when you start to play a character. And is that character serving your best interest? It's not even about judging yourself that you go into automated modes. It's like some things make sense. Like if your character is you brush your teeth every day, that makes sense. That's a thing that should be automated. But if it's, I always get irritated anytime anyone asks me for help. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense. Doesn't mean you should just take the opposite character and always try to help everybody. You know, you should use common sense, but that's what being alive means. It means having flexibility, using common sense in the moment to see actually what's best given the whole context of that moment. Some things are never going to change. We're like, at least anytime soon, we all need food and clean water. So that's something we should just automate, make it taken care of for everybody. We don't need to think about that. That shouldn't be like based on, do I feel like going to work today? No, if you have to survive, you have to survive. If you need water, if you need food, you need water and food. Versus like, do I feel like going for a walk, or do I feel like going to the park? In the moment, you can look at that. But do I feel like feeding my children today? Not an option. So do I feel like standing up and creating a world that's best for all? That's not an option. Because no matter what you do right now, whatever you try to hold on to as the character that you're playing right now, it's going to lead to the consequence of you not existing anymore. That's the consequence. So you're not going to survive this world anyways. So what if we dropped all our characters, which is not something you can necessarily do like that, but you can make the decision like that. And then you have to walk the process of actually untangling this whole web because there's so many points and you've given them energy. And as soon as you stop one, another one comes up. And as soon as you go participate in energy here, it feeds energy to all of them. And then they start taking over again and you start just acting like a robot. So it's a process. We don't want to be too hard on ourselves. Like when we go into it, like beat ourselves up, because that's a character too. Beating yourself up and gossiping within your own mind about like how shitty you are and I'm so bad. It's the same thing as talking about how good you are and all of that. So you don't want to go into that character. It's like really a matter of investigating all the characters, taking them apart one by one, but realizing that we have to challenge that main character, which is what's creating the character of this world as everybody has to survive. Fuck you, fuck your life. Nobody deserves to live. Inequality is just a fact of existence. The survival of the fittest. Those are all just like the one character of this world that we're all giving authority to. It's like it's like the sum total of all of our characters, which are at the end of the day self-interested, just looking out for me, not considering that, hey, you could actually have a really cool fucking life if you stood up and started doing what's best by speaking up, changing yourself, walking this process that we're talking about, reading Creation's Journey to Life, Heaven's Journey to Life, doing Destiny I process, using Techno Tutor, joining the Global Information Network, Jen, being a part of a group that are people that actually fundamentally care and want a better life and want to have fun in their lives. You know, these are certain things that if you do these things, your life will improve and you'll be able to be in a position of more responsibility. But even if you just change yourself to be okay with the world being adjusted so that everybody has what they need, even if you just change that about yourself, so you're okay with that, when someone else comes along who says, hey, I have an actual way to implement this, let me show you all the details totally openly so you can see if it makes sense or not. And then when you see that it makes sense, you can say, I agree to that. I give my vote to that. But if you don't remove those characters within yourself that's just based on self-interest and survival, when that point comes along, a character will come forward and be like, I don't know, seems too good to be true, or something like that. It's going to sabotage it. That character is not serving you anyways. No matter what comes up in your mind right now of all the reasons and excuses as to why equality can't work and all that stuff, those are just characters, and they're just going to keep you in the world stuck the way it is. And the reality is you're not in the actual controlling elite. So your life is actually shit, and you have no idea the lives that they have. And they have those lives because we're their slaves. And I don't know if you're okay with that. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that for you. So whether you're okay with it or not, I'm not okay with it for you. And deep down, you're not okay with it. It's just, again, the excuses come from a character that was programmed into you. Not just by your parents, but by the media, by education, by the political system, by economics, by all those other systems are also forming your character as well. And that's they're doing that. It's done by design to keep the system in place. And there's no conspiracy. It's not a person doing it. It's not a group of people necessarily that are in total control of everything. Yes, there are groups that control certain things. There are groups that control certain resources. And they work together in a spirit of cooperation just because they're of a like mind of, I want to control everything and I have no morality about doing that. Whereas everybody else is like, I don't want to be a bad person and try to control other people. Meanwhile, you're just a slave and you control people other ways through like manipulating them to get energy and stuff like that. You're just the fucking same, but you create a character, which is I'm the moral person. It's just a character. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like they're all just fucking characters. None of it's real. Because none of anything that anybody is doing is producing a world that's best for all. That's a fundamental problem. So the solution is investigate these points that I'm talking about. Start applying them. And really start investigating for yourself. How do you act in automated ways that is actually not best? And the key to all of it is just being honest with yourself and not suppressing the thoughts that come up, looking at them and being honest with yourself. You know, I do have that thought. I do have that feeling. Where does that come from? What have I accepted within me that would justify such a thought or a feeling? Let me forgive myself for that. And see if I can release that and if I can change the way I interact with this person or that thing so that I'm not living according to that thought or that feeling. I'm actually doing something differently. Those are all things that you'll learn if you walk the Destiny I process and read those 2 blogs. So until next time, I will see you again.